Okay,
All
love
right.
it.
Can you introduce yourself and just yeah, let us know a little bit about yourself and where your Harry Potter obsession began.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kevin. I'm originally from California, born and raised there, but now I'm doing my undergraduate in Philly, and so been here for the last 4 years. I've throughout these not many years, but I've enjoyed Harry Potter through ever since the beginning. And let me think about how my Harry Potter journey started. Um,
Because you're different from a lot of people on the channel already, because most of the people on the channel already are millennials who loved Harry Potter. We have a
right.
few of a younger crowd. Like most of the people that I convinced to read these books are college students,
Hmm.
and they all love them. I'm like, yeah, come on, don't deprive yourself of joy. But I'm interested to hear like where you started, why you started liking Harry Potter.
Yeah, totally. No, I've definitely noticed that, and it's been really cool just hearing all of the other perspectives of people who, were, reading the series as it was coming out. I unfortunately didn't get that, privilege,
Hmm.
but I think I got my start. I was talking to my dad about this actually a couple of weeks ago because I was like, I'm listening to this podcast. I'm like interested about the origins of Kevin and Harry Potter, and I don't remember because I was really young.
Yeah, yeah.
And my dad was telling me that the first time he ever saw Harry Potter, I think he was living in Minnesota at the time doing his PhD, I think.
Hmm.
And he was at the airport and at like a I guess a bookstore in the airport. He saw like the first Harry Potter book in the shelf, and he was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I've heard about that. It seems like it's a pretty big thing." That was his first experience with Harry Potter, and somehow that turned into reading Harry Potter to me when I was quite young, probably 4 or 5, I would assume.
That's
That's
so
what he.
cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I feel like he think he vetted the books when he read it the first time. He was like, "Oh, this seems like a good thing for my children to read." And he read it to me when I was a kid. He doesn't really remember the details of it, but he does know that
Yeah.
he for sure read it to me because when he started reading it to my brother's like 3 years younger than me. Um, I he remembers I was telling my brother, you really got to listen to my dad read the book. His Hagrid voice is so good.
Next thing you're gonna tell me your dad's Jim Dale or something like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I'm Kevin Dale.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. No, but I think he copied the Jim Dale version of Hagrid and Dobby. I think he was doing the yeah, wizard Harry, or like the
That's sick.
oh god, that was a
No, that was
terrible
great.
impression.
That was so good.
Um, wait, let me try Dobby real quick. Wait, wait, wait.
Jim Dale's Dobby is funky too. So
Dobby, Dobby is free.
yeah, it's a great
Oh my
one.
god.
Don't be the house
Uh,
elf. He always does.
Dobby the house elf.
Yeah, we were talking too about a creature. His creature voice is so fascinating because it's supposed to sound like a bullfrog, but he
Yeah.
has such a low voice. Jim Dale does such a low voice for him.
Reacher.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dude, you should. All right, skip the whole like undergrad and just
Oh
go
my,
straight into voice acting right here.
bro, for real, for real. Yeah. No, but anyway, getting sidetracked a little bit, but I love my dad always loves doing voices, and
Hmm.
even though I don't remember it a lot, I think that it really started my love for Harry Potter, and I think I read The Sorcerer's Stone on my own around first grade or so.
Nice.
It had been out for a while since then. I mean, what probably had been almost 10 years had been out at that point. But I do distinctly remember in second grade we had to do a book report, and I was like, "What book can I read?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't read Chamber of Secrets, the second book in the series." I was like, "Okay, I'll do this for the book report."
Nice.
So I went to the library, I get the book, and it was it's so funny how I distinctly remember this. Like the librarian, I was like, "I don't see it on the shelf. Can you like help me find it?" And she goes to the back room and she finds the one copy of it left that hasn't been loaned out. And but I guess I wasn't like the most avid reader at that point or something.
Hmm.
But the book report, I didn't actually end up reading the whole book. I think I only read like the first 5 chapters,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I only presented on those 5 chapters. But yeah, I think second grade was when I read the second book. And my dad was, I don't know why he came upon this idea, but it seems like, you've talked about it before, reading one book a year.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I think that probably because he thought maybe it'd be a little too mature to
Mm.
some of the books. So he wanted me to read one book every year. And so I think I read Azkaban the year after, and then fourth grade, I was reading Goblet, and I mean Goblet I think I'll talk about this later, but I
Yeah.
think as a kid it was my favorite book.
It's
Just
such an
so
adventure.
engrossing.
Yeah.
It's just an adventure. I mean, it's like it's perfect for a kid to, it's still, I think it's still fun enough where a kid can really like relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
But um, I I was just so engrossed in it. It's like I gotta find the fifth book. And funnily enough, Order of the Phoenix was in our like little, fourth grade classroom's library. And so I was like, oh, well, my dad's not gonna know. So
No
so
way. You
so
snuck it? Nice.
so I sneakily read Order of the Phoenix. Would have it like in my we had, you know how the get desk where you like lift the top of the
Yeah,
desk and
yeah,
you have like all the stuff inside. I would have like Order of the Phoenix like inside there, and I'll be reading it, and my dad would be picking him up. I was like, oh, I gotta hide it.
This is so good. I am so into this story right now.
But yeah, and so I read Order of the Phoenix secretly, and I think somehow I convinced my dad. I was like, because at this point, everybody in my class had read Harry Potter. Like,
Hmm.
I think I got Dumbledore's death spoiled for me because I mean, fourth
Yeah,
graders
yeah,
they can't keep their mouths shut.
yeah.
You had 14 girls in the class dressed up as Hermione for Halloween. Like they were obsessed and they could not keep their mouth shut. But yeah, and so I think in the next year or so, I read through the last two books. I don't. The funny thing is I think because I was young at that point, I don't remember my first reading experience through those books, and
Yeah.
it's a little sad. It's a little sad because I feel like, if I had read it when I was a teenager, maybe I feel like I would have, remembered it a little bit more. But it's all good. I've read it countless times,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
by this
Yeah.
point, and
It's hard to remember your first read sometimes. Like even me looking back on like my absolute first read, I remember a few things
mm,
here and there. Like there's a few details that kind of are firmed up. But the whole entire experience of it just evades me, which is even just why I wanted to start this podcast. Because I'm like,
yeah.
the experience of reading it for the first time, like everyone says that, you wish you could read your favorite series or watch your favorite like movie or listen to your favorite album for the first time again. And that was my experience with Harry Potter. I was like, I don't remember a ton of the details that I read it for the first time. So I want to relive that experience because I just remember the experience, like the feelings that I had when I read it. And I wanted
Yeah.
to recapture that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pull my friends into this and I'm going to force them to do a podcast with me.
No, that's so good because I think your catchphrase vicariously living through other
Mm-hmm.
people, I think, it's so true. I think I think how I got onto this podcast is somehow I think because I was in the last 2 or 3 years, I got really obsessed about watching YouTubers react to Harry
Yeah,
Potter
yeah,
movies for
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
first time. And I just go deeper and deeper to less and less viewed videos, and
Yeah,
I was just that content was just so like special to me because
yeah.
everybody's reaction was different. And somehow I think a YouTube video of your guys's got recommended to me, which is crazy. I mean, it's a small channel at that
Yeah.
point, and I think the podcast only had a couple hundred views on each of them. So somehow
Man,
I got recommended it, and you know, that's how I got binge onto the podcast. But
that's awesome.
it's awesome because it's so different experiencing the books for the first time than experiencing the movies for
Yeah.
the first time because
Yeah.
the you just know more, and I feel like you can just discuss more. And sometimes when you're watching the movies for
Yeah.
the first time, you don't catch everything. Not everything makes sense. When you watch it, you think you understand it, but you look a little closer at it, and you're like, "Oh, did I really get? How does this tie with one another?"
Yeah.
It's but yeah, this is a special experience for
Yeah.
sure. And so
That is kind of why I'm excited for the series as well. Like I feel like I mean, obviously Harry Potter hasn't like really dipped. They're still like $1 billion industry. You know, they're making like
Mm,
places in like Florida, like in Universal, that are like Harry Potter land. So it's not necessarily dipping, but I feel like some of the interest level, like you know, it's always that the pendulum swing in human history of you hate what your parents get into. So like I remember when I was growing up, like Facebook was a thing, and then as soon as your parents get on Facebook, you're like, no way, I'm getting off of Facebook. And then Instagram became
oh
it, and
yeah.
then now as soon as your parents get on Instagram, you're like, no way, I'm getting off that. I'm going to like, you know, TikTok or Twitter. So like you keep reacting against what your parents do. So I feel like there's a reactionary movement right now where parents love it, but like their kids are like, I don't care about it, I don't want to hear it. So I'm excited for the series to come out where people can we will get more like first time experience content where people will like
Yeah.
will check out the series and kind of fall in love with it through that series, and then they'll want to revisit the books again. And I feel like there's going to be like a whole like plethora of fun content that's coming out.
Yeah, I agree. I think, this is a good opportunity, even though I personally feel like the TV show is coming out a little early. It seems
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
you know, if when this stuff starts airing in a couple of years, it's it'll maybe be what, oh God, almost 20 years
Yeah,
since Deathly Hollows, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem, yeah, it seems a little too recent for my comfort. But um, I agree. I think it's a good jumping off point so that we can then do all these cool spin-offs and
yeah,
with similar familiar faces and
yep.
if we
Because
get some
that,
iconic
yeah, that's the stuff that I'm excited about. And I mean, we're jumping into like the last kind of questions, but what kind of like spin-offs are you most interested in? Because this series to me seems like the best launching point for spin-offs.
oh
And
my
that's what
God.
I'm most interested in. I feel like they can do so many fun things with spin-offs.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this. I'm a pre-med student currently, and
Mm-hmm.
so, medicine is obviously an interest of
Yeah,
mine.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I feel like a magical like I don't know, like a doctor drama series or
Oh, that'd be
something like
so
that.
good.
It would be so cool because, I don't know, you could do so many things. You could, maybe walk through somebody's like because we don't really know much about how people get trained after Hogwarts and like
Yeah,
how that works. And like, we hear a little bit about aura training and that seems cool. I mean, just from the little bit we've heard, but I'd love to see how the medical school or whatever it would in the wizarding world would look like. And there'd be just so many cool case studies that
yeah.
you could look into and plants growing out of people's faces and conjoined people uh, and splinching. Like I've always like been
Yeah,
so curious about how you fix that. It seems so strange. Like how do you pull something that's like from it could be thousand miles away? How do you bring that leg back to the person?
yeah.
Like that's all like really cool stuff to me.
They could do so many fun ones too. They could do like, you know, the ER of St. Mungo's, but they could also do like House where there's like extreme cases where they don't know how to fix it, and it takes them like this incredible healer knows how to fix all the issues. So they bring all the things to him. Like that'd be a fascinating series.
Oh my God, yeah. I think I mean there's so much stuff they could do with it. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it turned into like a Grey's Anatomy, like 20
Yeah,
seasons. Like
yeah. In one of the episodes in the season, they get this annoying kid in Dudley who's a muggle who has a pigtail, and they're like, "Oh, we got to take this off. We got to figure out how to get it off." Like, you know, like little
yeah,
cameos like that would be so fun.
that would be so cool. Like even like cameos of like if we get the Neville scene in St.
Oh my
Mungo's. Oh
god.
my God, we better get that because that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite moments of the entire series. If you could get some, like the Donald Trump cameo in Home Alone, you
Yeah,
get like some
yeah,
like A-list actor like
yeah.
cameo in St. Mungo's, and then that's like the jumping off point to have them be the main character in like
Yeah,
whatever
seriously.
spin-off show. Oh my gosh, there's so much they could do with that.
That's a niche spin-off series, but I feel like that could be so successful and so fun. Um
Yeah.
like there was a show that I used to watch when I was in high school a little bit called Fringe.
Mm,
It was like not necessarily like a medical show, but it was like, you know, all these crazy strange occurrences are happening, and this team of like exceptional people has to figure it out. And I feel like they could
mm,
do that with medical. I feel like they could do that with just like strange things that happen in the wizarding world. Like there are spells that are invented that you don't really know like how this thing came to be, or like potions that are invented. Like these people who are on the cutting edge, and this like supernatural team has to like figure that kind of stuff out. And I feel like that would be
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, and wait, just that's such a good point. Like, we don't really get to hear about how new spells are made, or
Yeah.
even if you make new spells, is it just like a thing that already exists and you're just
Mm-hmm.
like pulling from the ether? How does that work?
Yeah.
I think medicine at the cutting edge. You're doing some cool stuff there, and like the wolfsbane potion. Like, how do you
Yeah.
figure out how that? Do you like take a hair from a werewolf and you like do some like reverse like engineering to like
Yeah,
find
really.
the that stuff. There's a million different directions you could go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a medical series would be insane. Um,
I
but
even
yeah, I mean,
I even just want like, like I know there's just tons of fan fiction out there, but I would love someone to pick it up and like doctor some canonical works of, even some people might think this is boring, but like even what she did with like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I want one about like maladies and like injuries and like how what you're talking about with splinching is such a fascinating topic for me. I'm like, how how do you actually go about fixing something like that? How did you actually, like with Snape's expertise in potion making? That's one of the most intriguing things for me in the series. How is he that good? And how does someone experiment with this stuff? Like I don't it's so beyond me. Like that kind of level
yeah,
of chemistry, that kind of level of like how do you know how these things interact with each other? How do you know like the how did we invent the wolfsbane potion to help someone through like their lunacy essentially? Like that is crazy to me.
yeah. I think I mean we got a little bit of a taste with that in like Slughorn's class and
Mhm.
doing antidotes
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. But yeah, really not too much other than that.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I was gonna say is those like offshoot books like Fantastic Beasts
Mhm.
and Quidditch Through the Ages. Those books were like an actually a pretty essential accessory for
Yeah.
my Harry Potter love as a kid. I did karate class from like ages like 5 to
Yeah.
12 or something like that, and they had a little like space for parents to watch the kids doing their class, and they had a little area with different books, and it was kind of messy. There was a couple of drawers, and there were like all the books were just all everywhere. But one day I had like I'm searching through the pile of books, and I find Quidditch Through the Ages, like, and it's like old and
Nice.
raggedy and everything. And so I start reading it. I'm like, man, this is some crazy content because
Yeah.
I had already loved the Quidditch chapters. This is I'll maybe get into this later, but maybe it's a hot take, but the Quidditch chapters are some of my favorite in the series. They're so
Yes.
fun.
I love that
Yeah,
you love those.
they are so fun. I don't know. I could spend so long just learning about the rules of Quidditch and
Yeah.
how I think people complain, oh 150 points from the snitch. It's like it's kind of not a well established game, but
Yeah.
I mean some games are better established than others. It's fine. It's still
Yeah.
fun. It's it's a
And my hot take on that too is if you're talking professional sports, like there's a difference between high school where they're playing in Hogwarts versus semi-pro versus pro. Like I think when you're playing at the pro level, you can score 150 points in like 10 minutes. I feel like there are some pro
yeah.
teams out there in the Quidditch leagues that like 150 points is like, okay, this is just 10 minutes and then someone finds it. So I think the snitch is actually like well balanced in pro leagues, but I feel like, it needs to like carry down a little level. Maybe like Hogwarts, it's 50 points or something like that because they have a tougher time scoring goals, or I don't know, something like that.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I mean that's the first taste we got from that was at the World Cup where they didn't feel like they didn't talk to the timeline, super
Yeah.
specifically, but it seemed like, from reading it, they scored 60, 70 points within the span of 2 minutes.
Yeah. And they were
They were
bummed that the
using,
game ended so fast.
yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, I wonder whether Rowling, when writing that book, she was like, people are complaining about Quidditch, like that kind of stuff. I'm gonna, make this scenario
Yeah.
where, now they kind of understand. I don't know. But yeah, no, I love the Quidditch chapters.
Yeah. I think she confirmed
And,
that too because I think people are like,
oh,
"Oh,
really?
this is like such a dumb game. It doesn't make sense." She said, "This game is like literally the game of life. Like a team can be working so hard for the entirety of the game and then all of a sudden the other team gets a lucky catch and they win. Like that's life. You could be working really hard for something and all of a sudden someone else does something really simple and they get lucky and then like they are off in fame and fortune. So I think she kind of
Yeah.
like was like, yeah, it's kind of like the game of life. But I love that you love the Quidditch chapters. I feel like not a ton of people love the Quidditch chapter, so I'm down with that.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was because I read it as a kid, but when we get into rankings of the books, I think a lot of my rankings nowadays are heavily influenced by, my readings as a kid.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just couldn't get into Chamber, and I couldn't get into Azkaban
Hmm.
as well as the first and fourth books. I would just reread the first and fourth books
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Something about, like, I don't know. I think there was a lot of Quidditch and in the first book, and all the magic of going to Hogwarts, and then the fourth book, obviously you have all the challenges and everything. I don't know. There's something about it, but those two were the ones that I reread the most
Hmm.
as a kid. Um, but
Now,
yeah, I
do
think.
you remember how many times you actually reread the series? I mean, the first and the fourth is probably like ad nauseum. It's probably like so many times, but
Yeah, I have no idea at this point, to be honest. I think because I've read, maybe, okay, if we're talking about reading them in the actual physical books, I would think maybe a total of 6 or 7 times.
mm-hmm.
But through audiobook, as from ages like 11 to 16, when driving around, my dad
Oh
would be
yeah,
driving me around from practice or whatever I'm going. We would have the audiobooks,
yeah,
on 24/7. I remember
yeah.
in sixth grade, we were driving down to LA for some like science fair thing I was doing, I forget.
hmm
And I was so excited because I was gonna listen to the audiobook of a Half-Blood Prince for the first time.
Oh
And
man.
and so it was like, what, a 6-hour drive, and so we got into it, and then we once we got there, I was like, can we just get out?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a chapter, Dad. Um,
It's so
uh,
true. It's so true. They're so good.
because I think Jim Dale. I mean, I listened to Jim Dale versions growing up, and so they're kind of there's just a feeling of comfortability with that.
Yeah.
If I listen to it, I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm home now.
Yeah.
And it's funny enough. I think the way that he reads some of these scenes really adds so much more depth to them. When
Mm.
you're reading them on a page, sometimes you don't quite like, you can, it's like reading a text message. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't quite understand the tone of what they're talking about, or you don't not quite getting, the true message. But when Jim Dale emphasizes certain words in each sentence, and you're like, oh, that's what it
Yeah.
means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just get more emotional about a certain scene. Um,
And
and so
there's
yeah.
like positives and negatives about that. And I think that's such a fascinating point because some people like Stephen Fry because he gives a more neutral read, which is like it kind of leaves it up for your interpretation a bit more. And that's one of the
Mhm.
joys of reading is that you can kind of interpret these things in your mind however you see fit to interpret them. Like the author is obviously leading you down a certain point, but there's been certain points where I'm listening to the Fry audio and I'm like, the tone that some of these characters have is so unexpected. And then because Dale was my bread and butter, so like the way that Dale reads and interprets the text, I think is so good. I think it's perfect. So I used to like have long road trips too, and I was pumped for I used to love driving anywhere because I'm the same. They would always be on, and I was like so
Yep.
excited. I did like a almost a 24-hour road trip once, going
Dang.
all the way down to Texas, and I was so pumped for it. And I like stayed over in Nashville, and I like hung out with some family over there. But then I was like excited to get back on the road so that I could just listen to Harry Potter because they're like that captivating. They're that good. And Dale does such a good job. You could pick it up anywhere, and I can know exactly where he is in the books. Like
Yep.
it's just so good.
Yeah, I think I forgot what I was going to say there, but yeah, no, totally agree with
Yeah,
that. I think what I was going to say is the last time that I listened through, um, because now that I don't have now I'm somewhere else, I don't have access to those audiobooks and all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. I've been like just pining for being able to read it like on my walks between classes and things like that. So I think I less than legally
That's
got some
okay. That's okay. There's no problem with that.
less than legally got the audiobooks downloaded onto my phone in my files. So
Yes.
now so whenever I need to, I can pull up a random chapter and start listening.
Because it's a necessity.
So
You gotta be able to have that wherever you go. Like,
yeah,
come on.
exactly. Yeah, it's necessary, mandatory.
Yeah, there's no judgment on that. Everyone in our community is like, you have to be like, everyone has done that. So like, that's an absolute
Yeah.
necessity. Now, what house are you in?
I am a Hufflepuff. Um,
Yes, dude, I like you more and more every single thing you say. Hufflepuff, you like Quidditch.
oh my gosh, yeah, Hufflepuff Pride. I think I was very conflicted about that decision when I got that result. I
Mm-hmm.
think I did it when I was a little bit older, maybe around 16 or 17. And I was like, I appreciate Hufflepuff. It's a cool house, but I always thought that I was like a Ravenclaw. I was like,
Mm.
oh, I always thought that, oh, I'm like relatively good in school, and I'm just. But the more that I thought about it, I'd actually be interested to see what you think about this. But the distinction between the houses. I see Gryffindor and Hufflepuff being kind of like the relying on friends and kind of like
Yeah.
the two loyal houses, whereas Ravenclaw and Slytherin are a little bit more of like the lone wolf, like I'm gonna do my own thing, and those seem like the two like okay, I can do this on my
Yeah.
own
A
kind
little
of houses.
independent. Yeah.
And even more than that, um, when I was thinking about learning, I think Ravenclaws tend to learn for their own interest.
Hmm.
Like they pursue something like they're like, for example, I'll get into a little bit about my roommates, but I
Yeah.
think they're all a different house. My
Nice.
roommate, he loves music, and so he'll just sit in his room and compose and improvise and do whatever by himself for hours on end every day. And I see that as like learning for self gain, like you're
Yeah.
appreciating
Yeah.
and I think that he is the model Ravenclaw. Whereas the more that I thought about it, um, when I learn, I feel like I learn. I enjoy learning for the sake of being able to apply it to other things. Like for example, learning that what I learned in a physiology class that I just took
Mm-hmm.
into a clinic visit that I just went to, and being able to apply things to others, and I think that maybe that's a little bit of a different dynamic of learning than
Yeah.
learning for yourself. And
Yes.
that's something that I thought that maybe that's kind of how it makes sense why I'm a Hufflepuff. And I think as I've gotten older too, I think I've become more Hufflepuff. And maybe if I
Yep.
took the quiz when I was like 9 or something, I'd be a Ravenclaw. That's why the conversation you guys had way back on the pod about sorting later during your time in
Yeah.
Hogwarts. I think it's such an interesting idea because I think that especially for Muggleborns when they're coming to Hogwarts for the first time, I think that their relationship with themselves and others, I think can change pretty
Yes.
drastically. I kind of see my headcanon is that Hermione, before she came to Hogwarts, was not really that good of a student. And she was like, kind of just skiving off. And, her two
Yeah.
parents were dentists. She's living a pretty good life. And,
Yeah.
but she still doesn't really have too many friends. But when she got her Hogwarts letter, she's like, it's a whole new world out here. I got to make the most out of it. I mean, it's just kind of like
Mm.
us. If we got a Hogwarts letter, we'd, you know, we go crazy on the
Yeah.
learning. I feel like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I feel like that like I would be Hermione in that case, where taking making sure that I'm getting the most out of the education. So I think I wonder if she got sorted, before she came to Hogwarts, if she'd be a different house altogether. Like I don't know, but
That's such a fascinating take. I'm waiting for like people to do whole psychological dissertations on like the houses and like because I think the distinction that you're making is so interesting and I love the idea. There's Ilvermorny is one of my like obsessions too, and their sorting I am
yeah,
even more obsessed with. I love the Ilvermorny sorting. I think it's so interesting, and there's something with the Ilvermorny sorting that is the same with the Hogwarts one. And it's if all for Ilvermorny, there's these totems. There's the four totems, and if the totems select you, they like do different actions.
mm,
And if all of them want you in their house, you get to choose which house you want to be in. Very similar to the Sorting Hat, because I think to an extent the Sorting Hat, it obviously takes your desires into account. So with Harry, I'm saying he has the potential because he has ambition. He could be a Slytherin, or he could be a Gryffindor, and the Sorting Hat kind of gave him that option. I think with Hermione, I think you nailed it on the head. I actually think that there was one. I think it's happened like once in Ilvermorny's history where one witch had been given the ability to like go into any of the houses that she wants. All four of the totems
No
wanted her.
way.
I think I forgot exactly what her name was, but she was I think she's like the Macusa president, so like the Magical Senate of the U.S. president.
Oh,
And I think my headcanon is kind of similar. I think Hermione actually was given the ability to be in any of the houses that she wanted to be in. Like the Sorting Hat was like, hey, you have ambition. Because if you look at Hermione, she almost exhibits the best out of each four of the houses. She exhibits incredible ambition. Like we just kind of came to the one chapter where like the Minister of Magic, Scrimgeour, is like, oh, are you gonna be, in magical law enforcement? And she's like, no, I want to do some good with my life. She clearly has ambition. She has
totally
some of the deepest loyalty that is in the entire series of books. She's the smartest character in the entire series as well. But she picked Gryffindor. I think actually, like, to an extent, because of the exact thing that you're saying, because I loved your headcanon on that. That's like firming some of the things that I had up. She might not have been the most brave person before she came to Hogwarts. She might not have been the best student. She might not have been all that kind of stuff. But she had to make a conscious choice to be brave and to take like very courageous steps on her wizarding journey. And I feel like that is why she chose to be in Gryffindor. Like that's clearly my headcanon. It's nowhere in the books, but that is like easily my headcanon, because I think the exact same thing that you're saying. Like she kind of came from humble beginnings, coasting through life, and then when she became when she found out she was a wizard or a witch, she's like, I need to kick into high gear. I'm like way behind. I need to like learn all this stuff. And so I love that you said that.
Yeah, no, I love that thought too. The idea of that the Sorting Hat presented all four, that's so cool. I that's kind of headcanon for me now.
Yes.
Because I'm under the impression, because I think that the idea of sorting the houses is so much more nuanced than people like give it to start. Like I feel like you can be depending on who you're hanging out with, you will showcase different primary traits. And so if you're hanging out with more Gryffindors, I think maybe you'll learn, you'll take away some of the bravery and like, oh, I'm it kind of bolsters your own confidence or something like that. Like for example, I'll give you I'll give my roommates a little shout out. I live with three other guys, and I was thinking about their houses the other week because I was listening to these Tamale talks, and I was like, I was just thinking about what houses my friends would be in, because they're not the most Harry Potter loving people, but they deal with my Harry Potter nerdiness.
Yeah, we'll forgive them for that. It's all right.
yeah. They're still great people.
Yeah.
But so I have a roommate named Asher, and he's very self-sufficient. Like he doesn't really need too many people. He doesn't need to lean on somebody to be able to pursue something he is really interested in. So he was absolutely a Slytherin in my mind.
Yeah.
But I had him take a test, the Pottermore test, and he got Ravenclaw, and I was like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense. And it solidified my thought that Ravenclaw and Slytherin are very, very similar in some senses, where they're kind of the lone wolf style house.
Yeah.
And so just out of curiosity, I made him do one of those like other tests, the non-Pottermore tests that will give you kind of the percentage of each house. And it was like 40% Ravenclaw, 40% Slytherin, and then like 10% of the two others.
Dang.
So interesting. Interesting. So I still think him as, my wonderful Slytherin friend, but, according to Pottermore, he's Ravenclaw.
Well, you kind of nailed it though, because he's 40 and 40. So like that is exactly I love that theory that the independence versus the cooperation. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fascinating.
And then I'd already talked about my music loving roommate Anthony. He's very self sufficient. He loves learning things without really anybody, he doesn't have to have a class backing him
Mm,
to learn things, and just a Ravenclaw through and through. And he ended up also being Ravenclaw.
nice.
Um, and then my last roommate Nick, he I okay, I was so conflicted between Hufflepuff and Gryffindor, and just for the sake of having one roommate in each house, I was like, you've got to be Gryffindor. But he ended up being Hufflepuff, which is
All
like,
right.
okay,
Yeah.
understandable. But this is where the kind of the nuance about the houses comes in. I feel like in our group of four, he is the Gryffindor. He is the leader. He is kind of like the glue of the group. He's like,
Yeah.
the guy who's a little more adventurous, telling us, okay, let's go to this game, all this kind of stuff. But in a different group, he might showcase his Hufflepuff traits a little bit more. And so I haven't had him do the test that I had Asher do, but I really do think that he'd be like the same, like 40% of both Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. Um,
You're like an actual sorting out. I love this. You're like
it's
discovering what people are even before they know it. I think this is so cool.
it's so fun. It's so fun. I think I feel like I know somebody when I can sort them.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Like
Yeah,
I feel like there's there's just a level of like you don't just want to type people like I'm very resistant to that. Like if someone is whatever their Myers-Briggs is or Enneagram is, they're not exclusively that. Like and the older that they get, the more they like fall into different categories. Like everything could be kind of situational and different things, but I'm I was so skeptical of personality tests growing up, but then I love them more and more because I think it tells me so much about a person
mm,
for what their baseline is. Like, yes, and I love figuring out what their baseline is because when they act in different ways that is opposed to their baseline, I'm like, that is so fascinating that this person like my mind kind of works like yours. Like, what went on in the person's mind that made them want to do this action when it seems like they wouldn't do that? Like in a survival situation or whatever it seems like they would go the opposite way. So
yeah,
I really really love that, and I love seeing how they like fall into their wings and all that kind of stuff. So I love that you like there's different venues of magic, and one of my favorite things to talk about with people who are really into Harry Potter is like what you would want to see built out into the world. And I was reading with one friend who was in college, and he was talking about he was obsessed with the wand lore. He was like, I
mm,
just want to sit with Ollivander for like hours and just discuss like what it means that the wand chooses the wizard. He's like, I want to know all about like what different wands are used for, like the best, like the avenues for that. And I haven't heard too many people talk about the sorting, but that is such a fascinating idea for personality theory because that's the
yeah,
first thing that everyone says. Like if you say, "Hey, I love Harry Potter," the first question everyone asks is, "What house are you in?" You know?
yeah, totally. And sorry, we're talking about the hat so much. I'm just thinking of the musical about the scarf of sexual preference. I said hat. It's such
Was obsessed. The first time I saw that was last week, and I was obsessed with it. It was so fantastic. I was
so
dying.
good,
It was
so
so
good.
such an excellent musical. I loved it.
One of the best additions to
Yeah,
the Harry Potter world for sure.
yeah. I can't believe I hadn't seen it until last week. It was so good.
It's gonna be cool when you show it to the whole gang.
I
It'll
know.
be
I can't wait to watch it
it,
together.
yeah, it's gonna be a ball. I feel like watching things like that with a group of people, it just makes things funnier.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so that'll
Yeah.
be a good time.
Okay, here's the impossible task. Can you rank the books?
Oh my God, I knew this question was coming, so I wrote it down just so that I would lock it in. Okay, so starting from the bottom, my least favorite is Chamber of Secrets.
Yep.
Um, for some reason, it was just the book that I don't know, I couldn't, it was, it was just, I couldn't reread it over and over
Yeah.
again for some reason. I think some of the emotional notes, maybe as a kid, didn't really hit with me, and you know, I don't know. I think maybe once you read the story once, you're like, oh, I kind of get the story. We don't really need to
Yeah.
come back to it. And,
Yeah.
I already know the mystery's gone.
Yeah.
Like compared to like Goblet of Fire, the mystery is there. But I think even more than that, it's just there's just so much more to the
Yeah.
book than
How
just
they
the
get there is so much more fascinating than the chamber.
yeah. Although I do have a couple of really, a couple of scenes that I really do love in that book. But yeah, it's definitely number 7 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6 is Prisoner of Azkaban. I
Wow.
think, yeah, everyone loves Prisoner of Azkaban. But again, it was one of those books that I don't know, maybe I learned about the time turner. I'm like, okay, I kind of understand where the story, what happened here. I don't know what it was because it's now that I read it, I like it so much, but I think somehow my childhood read through it has like, I don't know, dampened my experience. I
Yeah. Yeah.
still love it, of
Yeah.
course, but I don't know, yeah, it's a little lower on my totem pole for sure. But oh my gosh, the characters that they introduce in the book are just fantastic.
Yeah.
And ironic thing is that a lot of the characters that are introduced in this book are the reason why I like a lot of the later books so much. And
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I guess uh, these two, Prisoner of Azkaban and Chamber of Secrets, I think were the two that I just didn't reread as much because as a kid, because of the 1 year a book limit, I was kind of reading through the first 4 books over and over again. But I tended to come back to Philosopher's Stone and Goblet of Fire much more. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, but the next one, I just mentioned how much I reread Philosopher's Stone, but I think that's my number 5. It's a great book. I think that just what it's missing is just a lot of the world building. I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yep.
in later books, it's just so much to take in, and you just get absorbed in every single
Yeah.
chapter. Um, I you know I think it's one flaw is that it's just too short. It's just too short, and
Agreed.
whether it's because of JK's like editors or whatever, if she had more to offer, I'm not sure, but man, if she spent like if you spent 2 whole chapters on Diagon Alley, I wouldn't like have
Yeah.
complained.
Same.
So, I think that, um, yeah, I think it's just the shortness of it and the limit that uh, limited capacity that it offers. I think
Yeah.
it's probably why it's 5 for me. But okay, here's where it gets interesting because don't really know how to. Hmm. These ones are tough. I'll just read what I got here, so I'm changing my mind. Number 4, I got Deathly Hollows.
Okay.
Um, I this one's a strange one because I think it's funny because this book is the one that I remember my first read the least. I feel like, uh,
Interesting.
even though it's the most recent, I don't remember like the emotional notes that were hit
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what happened when I read Deathly Hallows for the first time, but uh, maybe because I read it when I was younger and the meandering of like through the woods and stuff. I love that stuff now, but maybe
Yeah.
I am a big uh not supporter, but I feel like in my brain there's something where when the first couple of times I read it as a kid, it's heavily influenced how my synapses are connected in my brain now and how
Yep.
much I enjoy it now. So strange, but I've
I
got to put Deathly Hollows in
I
4.
I actually I think a lot of people place this low for the exact reason that you're saying, and my theory on this is because it's less established in a place that we know. Like they are
Mm,
in places that we know all throughout, but people hate the camping scene so much because they really can't visualize where, like Hogwarts in the first 6 books, everything happens in Hogwarts. So everything is so firm in your memory. You know exactly where they are at every single moment because you've built this incredible location in your head. And then everyone, like, you love the beginning, the burrow scenes and like all the wedding, even Shell Cottage. People love Shell Cottage
mm.
because you can like visualize it, but the camping chapters, people don't really know how to visualize some of that stuff, so it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like you're like rooted in um like you're in the nitty gritty and the dirty stuff. I like wrote my whole like master's thesis on like what it means to like how to really write well. And I like went through one writer who does it exceptionally well, and I kind of like analyzed her writing style. And one thing that she would constantly do is like set her stories in like very very like visceral and like known locations, because it just helps you establish yourself a lot more. And I feel like when the seventh book kind of goes off on that a little bit, it's harder to like figure out where you are. So people get really mixed up in their head, and it's like a whirlwind of a book because you don't have one set place where everything kind of is. So that's
Yeah.
my little headcanon on that. So
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. That made me think about the um, my experience with reading through, especially some of the first chapters of a lot of these books. Like, for example, Half the Prince, where with the other minister, and where
mm,
Goblet of Fire with uh, obviously at the Riddle House. Um, as a kid, I would skip through these chapters.
hmm.
Isn't that interesting? I feel like it totally connects to what you're saying, where it's
Yeah.
an unfamiliar place. I don't know what's going on. I just want to get to the Dursleys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
And
Which is wild to say. Yeah, you want to get to Dursleys, but I love every chapter that they start at the Dursleys because it's like,
yeah,
okay, we're back in where Harry should be.
yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, there's something about those chapters where even in Philosopher's Stone, where like the first chapter of Dumbledore bringing Harry over to the Dursleys,
Yeah.
I always skip that chapter too. So yeah, I think that connects to what you were saying. Totally, just unfamiliar place. As a kid, it's hard to really register, and like
Yeah.
I want to get to the Harry Potter that I know and love,
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
so
Yeah.
must be something like that. But Deathly Hollows, I mean, the scenes, and I mean that book, as as I've gotten a little older, it makes me cry the most, and so it's
Yeah.
in that sense, it's just a great book. But
Yeah.
something about the first time I read it, I think has influenced that.
Hmm.
Okay, number three, Order of the Phoenix.
Ooh, all right.
Um, I love this book.
Yeah.
It's just has so much information. The world building is fantastic. Like Harry's first look at the Ministry is just some of the best writing
Yeah.
ever. Well, I mean, not that some of the best writing ever, but just
No, it is so good. You're
it,
just in awe.
it's
Like you're in awe in Harry's shoes with him. It's great.
it's incredible. And oh my God, the way the movies do it too, I think they
Yeah.
totally captured the experience of reading the book.
Yeah.
But
Fifth movie is good. Yeah.
the fifth movie is absolutely. I mean, I could probably do a ranking of the movies too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but yeah, this book is fantastic. Nothing really much to say about that. I think just the last two I like a little bit more, just because I think they focus a little bit more about just the daily life and the
Hmm.
challenges of
Yeah.
Harry, and hanging out with his friends, and I think there's something about just the normalcy that's interesting to me, and so
Yeah. Yeah. There
that's
really is. That
that's
book has a lot of it too, which is I love that.
yeah. I think in Order, there's just a lot of a lot of struggle with occlumency, and trying to
Hmm.
figure out what's wrong with Harry's mind. So because you're trying to figure out what's wrong with Harry's mind, you can't really enjoy as much the his regular life, because you're thinking so much about his mental
Yeah.
state. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's probably why. It's not that he's like, a lot of people don't like this book. Like a lot of my friends, they don't like this one as much because he's so angsty and moody, and
Hmm.
I don't mind that so much. I just feel like there's something about that part that detracts a little bit from him being able to experience the world himself.
Hmm.
And because he's kind of limited, he's so focused on his own mental state and his own personal situation and his issues. He can't really see the world. He kind of has like a veil over his eyes a little bit. He can't really
Hmm.
see the world of Hogwarts as well as I feel like he can in the books that I have ranked above it. So
That's fascinating. I love that take.
yeah, but yeah, and so two and one for me is two is Half Blood Prince and one is Goblet of Fire. I think
Nice. Yeah.
I love these books are just neck and neck. I think they both just something about how they portray Harry and his relationship with his friends, the integration of Ginny and Half Blood Prince. I mean, I think she's just a great character.
Yeah.
She balances out Harry so well. Um, and I I think also reading as a kid. I'm still almost a kid now, but I like to think of myself as
Yeah.
still yeah. But um, yeah, these two books I think just following Harry around and figuring out this adventure that's in front of him in
Yeah.
Goblet and Half-Blood Prince, the mystery about I think just learning also about the classes that he's taking, especially potions. The stuff that he was doing with Slughorn was so cool to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just my interest in medicine or what, but all these different how he's making all these cool potions and with the help of the book. I think maybe I was so jealous of him that he had this like sick book that would
Yeah.
tell him all the answers
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
to
like an
school.
answer
I was
key.
like, yeah, I was like, oh God, I wish I had that. But yeah, no, those two books are for sure my favorite. I come back to those the most, I think, when I re-listen to the audiobooks, and so uh, those are one and two for me.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's a solid list. I feel like that's a very solid top three. I feel like that's a lot of people's top three right there.
yeah. I think a lot of people don't like Deathly Hallows so much, and I think
Yeah.
probably for the same reason as me. I think
Yeah.
subconscious. I think subconscious does a lot
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Now,
Mm.
favorite character. Do you have a favorite character or a few favorite characters?
Yeah, I have a few.
Good.
And here I'll label. Okay, I have three categories here. My
Yes.
first category is my actual favorite character,
Okay.
or in this case, it's favorite characters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. We could
you can
probably
probably
deduce.
guess. And then I have a kind of dark horse favorite character,
Love that.
and then I have of course I have to make a hot tamale pick.
Yes, I
So
love that you made out tamale. All right, I'm gonna
so
guess
I
Fred and George
yes.
are your favorites.
Okay.
Your, I'm gonna guess
You're never
your
gonna guess this. You're never gonna guess the dark horse, ever, in a
Cedric
million
Diggory.
years. No, but that's a good one. That's such a good one. Oh, I was so jealous of Cedric, like how
Yeah,
handsome and
he
smart
was
he was.
awesome.
Oh, wow.
All right, wait. First, tell me why Fred and George are your favorites.
Okay. So obviously they're just hilarious.
Yeah,
That's the number one thing, obviously. I think they make the book so fun, and JK does a great job about, in dark scenes bringing, some light and fun, and a lot of times it's Fred and George. And but I think it goes much further than that for me. Um, First of all, I think that what kind of goes under the radar is while they have just great synergy, a lot of people don't see them as, two different characters.
mm,
But as I've read it more and more, I feel like I don't know if this is purposeful or, she always just Fred starts out the conversation, then George follows. But
yeah,
I always saw Fred as kind of like the ringleader and George as kind of the more passive one.
yeah.
Like in the scene where they were blackmailing Ludo, it's George that's kind of afraid about the blackmail. It's like,
Yep.
this is blackmail. Why are we doing this? But Fred is pushing him on. It's like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
We got to play dirty like him.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, you won't be complaining if we get a nice fat payoff, right? And so, I think that Fred is kind of like the ringleader in this situation, and I think that this provides a little more nuance to their relationship because they're not just two guys that are just doing all the same things. I think they provide a little bit of push and pull so that
Hmm.
they can get to that perfect like middle ground where they're able to to find success. I think if it was two Freds, it would end up being like they would get a little too
Agreed.
crazy. Maybe
Yeah.
they'd turn into a James and Sirius kind of
Yeah.
situation. Maybe.
Honestly, I think the
Um,
two Freds are the movies. I think they're both Freds. They finish each other's sentences. I'm like, it's a little too extreme in the movies for me. When they're,
yeah.
I think in the books, like, I think you're nailing it. Like, they really are. They're not exactly the same. They're not all completely different. They're like a healthy balance of the two. You know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And what that actually leads to the point, the next point of why I like them so much is I just feel like they're just great brothers to have. I
Yeah.
feel, I'm an older sibling. I have one younger sibling who's a couple
Nice.
couple of years younger than me. But I think when I was reading as a kid, I'm like, dang, I wish I had two older brothers that were this fun,
Yeah.
getting me into little like crazy situations,
Yep.
and I was just so attached to them because I feel like they were just the older brothers I kind of wish I had.
Yeah. And even
And
their relationship with Ron, like they tease him, but you know they have his back like
Yeah,
all the time.
always, always,
Yeah.
always. And since you're always in Harry's head, they do it to Harry too. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many instances of this. One of my favorites moments for them, just in the whole series, is when Harry is he's ostracized in school. He because of the whole air of Slytherin thing,
Hmm.
and he's feeling really down upon himself. But then Fred and George are just parading around him, making light of it.
Yeah.
Here's the heir of Slytherin coming through,
Yeah. It's so good. Oh my gosh.
and you hear
Yeah.
his Harry's mental, his dialogue, and like it just made him feel just a little bit better. And
Yeah. That is
that's
legit one
just
of
the
my
stuff.
favorite. Like Chamber of Secrets is probably like least on mine too, but that is one of my favorite moments in not only Chamber but the whole series is like how they make people feel better by comedy and by just like extreme hyperbole. They're the class clowns. Like they are the good versions of class clowns. Like yeah, and everyone has the bad class clowns who are like going around making fun of people, but
Mhm.
they're going around saying how ridiculous is it that Harry is the chosen one. So let's like, or that he's the heir of Slytherin. So let's go around like making light of this and making people laugh and making Harry feel better for this because we want people to see how ridiculous this is. And it is just so good of a moment as like two wonderful human beings in that moment. I love that so much.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments in the whole series, and maybe that should bump it up over Azkaban for me. Who knows? But yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that moment so much. And obviously, I think what kind of cemented it for me is in an order when they're making the distraction so he could use Umbridge's office. I mean, they've got their own plans in place, but
Hmm.
I just feel like they're always looking out for him. And this is why I love the scene in the movie. It's so short, and usually gets cut out of movie reactions on YouTube. But when they're both comforting that
Yeah,
young
that
kid,
kid. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I knew exactly what you were going to say because I love that scene so much.
it's just beautiful. That's like one like the underrated scenes in the movie that make me
Yeah.
kind of like choke up a little bit. It's like
Yep.
that's the Fred and George I know and love, and
Yes.
um,
It's legitimately a
yeah,
great movie edition. Like, there's not a ton of really good book to movie changes they made, but that is
Mhm.
one of the really, really few good ones that they made. Where that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for why they really needed to cause such a stir and leave Hogwarts. And you're like,
Yeah,
if that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, that makes Fred and George so phenomenal. That like, okay, so they're torturing this little kid, and they're comforting this little kid, and then all of a sudden Umbridge shows up and says, liars need to be punished. And then Fred and George are
oh my
like,
God,
screw this lady. We are going to make her life miserable. And I'm like,
this is
let's
crazy.
go. Let's go. These guys are so great.
This is crazy. This is giving this little bit right here. It's giving me chills right now. I just
Yes.
I love this. I love this kind of conversation.
Yeah,
Just
me too.
the man, yeah, they're so much deeper than I think people would give them credit for.
Yeah.
And
And that,
they're
again,
definitely my
I'll talk about this till like my ears bleed, but I love how in depth she has created these characters in such little amount of time. Like we don't have a ton of page time on Fred and George, but like the depth that they have is phenomenal. They're not flat characters. There's no character who is really flat in this entire series. Everyone is multifaceted. Everyone's so complex. And oh my gosh, like I was even thinking Crab and Goyle, like two people who a lot of people think are so flat, but like their upbringing must have been so fascinating to like get who they actually were and get why they are the way that they are, you know?
yeah, and you get that a little bit in Deathly Hollows, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to learn more. And this is why I love my Dark Horse character because
Is it
people might
Victor
think he's
Crumb?
no, you'll never guess it. You'll never ever
All right.
in 100 guesses. Okay, my Dark Horse favorite character is Ernie Macmillan.
Whoa! All right, I love that. Oh my gosh, that is a extreme dark horse.
It is extreme Dark Horse, and maybe it's stretching it a little bit, but I am pining for more Ernie Macmillan content.
Interesting.
Like the one, I forget which book it must be in the, yeah, it must be in order when he's studying for owls, and he's like, how many hours have you
Yeah.
studied? Today I've studied 12. It's like,
Yeah, that's such a good
he's
scene.
he's such a funny character, and I love how, okay, JK, like, I love her writing, but
Hmm.
she has these like tropes for every single character. No matter what scene Ernie is in, he will say he's walking a little pompously, or like he's always talking a little pompously. She will never not say pompously if Ernie's in the room, which I find so funny.
Yeah, that's so great.
But I think when he is part of the DA, and we get to see him a little bit more, and
Mm,
he's just this stalwart of a guy. Like,
yeah.
he's he's kind of like this. I think that he's the embodiment of a Hufflepuff, because
Yeah.
he's not necessarily the smartest guy, but he works hard,
Yep.
and and I think that some he's a little hesitant to kind of get involved in the DA at first, but then eventually he can, then he signs on, obviously, but
Mm.
he's a little hesitant to start out with, and I don't know, I feel like he is, if I was in the book series, that would be me.
Mm. That's
And
cool.
so maybe that's why I connect with him a little bit, but yeah, because as a Hufflepuff, I think if I fill
Yeah.
myself into a character, I think he makes a lot of sense if I were to be Ernie Macmillan. So he's
Yeah.
my dark horse favorite character.
I love that. And that's
Yeah.
like any Hufflepuff character is just fantastic. That's why like Harry, yeah, he's the fourth champion, but the true champion was a Hufflepuff. That makes me really
Yep.
happy. And I love
Yep.
one of the things that Joe gave an interview someone asked her, and a few people have sent me this on like Instagram, and it's on some of their social of like
Mm,
it's a I can't share it yet obviously because it talks about the Battle of Hogwarts.
mm,
But um someone asks her what the best house is, or what house she would want to be in, and she says Hufflepuff. And her reason
wow.
is she's like, look at the last battle that they have, the Battle of Hogwarts. She says the Slytherins didn't stay because they are self-serving, they're independent, they want to survive. She said
Yep.
a few of the Ravenclaws stayed. That not all of them stayed. A few of them stayed, and a few of them fled. She said all the Gryffindor stayed, but you have to know why they stayed. They stayed because they're brave and they want to like test themselves. They like are excited
Yeah.
about the chance of a challenge. She
Yeah.
said the Hufflepuffs, on the other hand, all of the Hufflepuffs stayed, and she said why did they stay? Out of loyalty for the school, out of loyalty for each other, and out of loyalty for Harry. And I'm like,
Yeah.
let's go. That made me so pumped. I was like, that's exactly what it is. Ernie Macmillan, yeah, he might be a little too confident. He might Hannah Abbott, like she's lovely. Like all the Hufflepuffs are seen as very simple. But if you want someone to have your back, you want a Hufflepuff because they will die for you. I'm like, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. Ernie is, yeah, he might be like a little pompous, but he will die for Harry. And we
Yeah.
don't get a lot of page time with him, but you know that because he's a Hufflepuff. And I
Oh my
love
God.
that
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. And a shout out to Veggie Gamer. I love
Mm,
his read through, and he watched the movies, and now he's reading the books.
yeah.
He's taking his time with it, but he's also a Hufflepuff, and every time a Hufflepuff comes up in the books, he will spend 5 minutes of his time talking about why he loved Justin Flynn, especially. He's like, I
Yeah,
would love to learn about Hannah Abbott.
yeah. Yeah, seriously. They're
It's
such
so lovely.
fascinating characters, I know. They all
So
just seem
lovely.
like good friends, to be honest. Like you don't
Yep.
hear a ton about them, but they all like Hufflepuffs, they all just seem to band together and just like hang out with each other, you know?
Yeah, exactly. When they're at the, they're doing Slughorn's potions class, and the fourth person at the table is Ernie. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like the perfect guy to have at your table. Just the glue guy,
Yep.
just like
He really
he'll
is.
he'll keep things afloat.
Yep.
So
I love
yeah,
that.
love Ernie, love Ernie.
All right, what was your
All
last
right,
category?
my last category was the hot tamale
Oh
favorite book.
yeah, how can I forget?
Um, so this is hot tamale for a couple of reasons. I think so. Okay, it's okay. This is going to be really controversial,
Okay.
but it's Cho Chang.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Oh, I had such a crush on her when I first read Order of the Phoenix. Oh my goodness.
I was so sad when their date didn't work out. It was
Yeah,
going
me
so
too.
good. They were
Me
talking
too.
about Quidditch, and
I know.
man, I was so bummed the first time I read through that.
Yeah.
How disastrous that date was. But I think, I'm half Chinese by heritage, and I
Hmm.
think there's something about her being the only clearly like
Yeah.
of Chinese descent like character in the, Cho Chang might have been a strange pick for a
Yeah.
name,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but
For sure.
but there's I think there's something about that that really connected me to her, and I was like, dang, for Harry to, that to be his first like true crush, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
um and just like the little scenes in Prisoner of Azkaban of like, when they're playing Quidditch, and
Mm.
and he's like trying to be a gentleman there, and like,
Yeah.
Wood is
It's like
getting
knock
so
her off
mad
her
at him.
broom.
It's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good.
That's a
Yeah.
great pick. I that's one thing I don't remember a ton about my first read, but that's one thing I really remember clearly is like I just really wanted Harry to experience what it was like to be a kid and to like date. And I remember I got so excited at the Quidditch chapters because I was the athlete and I love those so much. And then the dating stuff too, like on his date with Cho, like the whole lead up, I was so much more invested in his Cho relationship than his Ginny relationship. Like his Ginny one was building up a little bit, but like, it just happens and it ends after like a month. With
Yep.
Cho, I feel like there was a 3-book build up to this. And then they go
Yeah.
on their date. And I remember like
Yeah.
when I first got the Order of the Phoenix book, I was someone who I would look at all the chapter art before I did it. And then I remember seeing that chapter art and being like, I can't wait to get to that chapter. I feel like that's the date with Cho. And I got there and was like, oh, dang it, Terry botched it. Like it was going good at certain points, and then it kind of just fell apart. And I feel like they were good for each other, but they just met each other at the wrong time.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's why I love the movies where, even though, yeah, I think Cho being in some of those Deadly Hollow scenes, and she wanted to help out Harry and all
Mm,
that kind of stuff, that really resonated me with Theo. It's like, yeah, I feel like if they gave it a couple of years and Ginny was out of the
yeah,
picture, I think that they would work out.
yeah,
They're
agreed.
little older, like, a couple more years passed from Cedric's death.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they would have really been great together. I think she's a little more mellow, a little bit
yeah,
more like grounded and in touch with her emotions,
yeah,
which Harry is just not.
yeah.
Um, and
Not at all.
not, not at all. And
Yeah,
I think that they'll make a great combination. Like, Jenny's great. I think she provides a little spark, and
yeah,
she kind of matches his energy. But sometimes you just kind of want the opposite personality to kind of just like
yeah.
ground you a little bit.
And they share a lot of similarities, but like their personalities are very, very different. I feel like Harry could have really used like someone who is a more mellow kind of person. Like some people ship him and Luna together, and I kind of like that a little bit. I love the movies too, where Neville and Luna get together.
Mm,
But a Harry Luna relationship seems like a little too ethereal for me. Where like Cho is
sure.
still the same kind of like independent and mellow person, but she's like more, like on Earth. So I feel like their relationship really could have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a fan fiction world where, Cedric wasn't into Cho, and
Mm,
Harry asked her to the,
yeah.
asked her to the Yule Ball, and then, Voldemort never came back, and they would go through 4 whole books of being together. Oh, what
Man,
we missed out on. What
I
we missed
know,
out on.
seriously, I know.
Oh man.
That would
But
actually be
yeah,
fascinating when people talk about like what perspective they would want the books to be from other than Harry's. I feel like Cho would actually be an interesting one.
it would be interesting. Like, I feel like some of my favorite moments now when I read through the books are the emotional moments. And I
Yeah.
think just understanding her mental dialogue, and, her moments in the bathroom by herself, just crying, and, trying
Mm,
to tackle all of the variety of things that she was going through at that point. Like,
yeah,
just poor girl.
I know.
I think that kind of stuff, it wouldn't make for a good book, but it would make for an interesting
Yeah. Yeah.
read for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What is your favorite moment or moments? You could do a few different favorite moments, but that's like a really tough question. But do you have a favorite moment in this whole series?
Man, this one's so tough
Yeah, I know.
because, like, I don't know, I think it's whichever moment I'm like reading through at the moment. But
Yeah. That's such a good answer.
the one that comes back to me over and over again even though it might not be the most, uh, I don't know, well appreciated moment,
Mm-hmm.
but it's when um, Molly is dealing with the boggart. Um,
Ooh.
that's just it's just it's just such a pure like showcase of just her emotions and why she's so invested in the
Mm.
order and why she's you know why she is the way she is. And
Yes.
you don't really get a good insight into this before Order of the Phoenix. I think when and when you see this in book five, you're just like, yeah, this is why she does the way why she she's in the order the
Yeah.
second time around, and why she's so protective over Harry, and she doesn't want to divulge so much information to him. And yeah, it's just I probably cry the most over this scene than
Mm.
any other scene in the entire
Yeah.
series. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just about like a pure mother's love is
Yeah.
just so beautiful to me.
That is a great take too, because like even what we were saying before, how she doesn't really create flat characters, and up until Order of the Phoenix, Molly Weasley's not like a completely flat character, but she's one of the flatter ones. And then in Order of
Yeah,
the Phoenix, when this Bogart happens, you're like, oh my gosh, like the terror that this woman really must be experiencing, and you really like take a step in her shoes, and you're like, that's why I've said this a few times before, but my brother, when he was listening to the series for the first time, the moment that he cried was when Molly defends Ginny and kills Bellatrix. And he's like, I love the whole series, but he's like, that moment like really got to me because he's a parent and he like really experienced that. So he said the same kind of thing. Even in Order of the Phoenix, he's like, that was a really scary moment when Molly was tackling the Bogart and it was showing all the like, because that's like every parent's worst fear. And Molly is really being such a good parent in this whole thing, not only to her own children, but to Harry and Hermione and like the whole order as well. Like her real fear is to see these people not live the lives that they really should live, which is like the
yeah,
whole series, like, living the life that you like kind of deserve and that you want to live. Such a great
yeah,
character, such a great moment.
yeah. She's just a great character, and I think the that's why the length of the books of 4 through 7 is so important because you can fit in the moments of Molly giving the watch to Harry and
Mm.
just the hug that between them,
Oh my gosh.
just beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably my favorite moment across all the books. But I have a couple of other uh, minor favorite
Yeah, yeah,
moments.
of course.
Um, this is a kind of a weird one, but the start of Philosopher's Stone when Harry's out and about with Vernon, and and Daedalus Diggle comes out of nowhere, and it's like, and the way he interacts with Harry is so funny to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I would always skip this chapter as a kid, but I come back to this. This dude is so funny and
yeah.
strange
Yeah, he
and
is.
weird. And why is he the way he is? And then we see him again, talking to the full circle, coming back to the Dursleys' house,
Mm-hmm.
in book 7. Like, wow, this character also came for full circle.
Yeah, it
How
really is
interesting.
cool. It really is cool.
um, but yeah. Okay, a random thing that I just thought about. I jotted this down earlier because I thought that was so interesting. I don't know if you know this, but Dumbledore's name origin, it's in Old English, it means bumblebee, and
No
it's because
way.
he'd just always be walking around the castle of Hogwarts humming to himself like a bee. Interesting, right? It's so
That's
random, but
so
also
cool.
cool, right? Yeah, that was just a random note I like had right here. I was like,
I
oh,
love that
interesting.
so much.
It captures his character so well
Yeah,
too. Just
agreed, agreed. Yeah,
such a random word, but it makes so much sense.
yeah. Which is
But anyway,
why,
sorry.
and I'll like digress on this too, because any chance that I get to like bash Gambon a little bit, I feel like
Okay.
Gambon's character wouldn't necessarily be humming around the castle. Maybe in some movies, but like,
Yeah.
that's why I
I,
love the idea that Dumbledore in the books, he's like literally just roaming through the castles, like just humming to himself, kind of in his own world. I think that's
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, random tangent, but I just love that. I found
Mm,
out a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, interesting little
that's
tidbit.
cool.
I never knew before. Um, okay. Another one that I just love is in Goblet of Fire. All of Ron's moments with Dobby are so cute.
Yeah.
So cute. Um, Books are Dobby's favorite clothes, sir. And he's like telling Harry, there did something wrong with your socks. They're matching. What's going on here? And Ron's like, here's all my different socks. You can mix and match them.
Yeah.
So cute.
It
And I
really
think
is.
it shows so much about Ron's character too,
Yeah.
because he can be a little nasty sometimes, but
Yeah.
at the core of core, he just knows what's up.
Yeah.
He's just a sweet guy, and I think he learns a lot of that from Arthur, and he's a great father, and I think
Mm.
he knows how to connect with somebody in that way. So I think that's why Ron
Yeah.
is the way he is.
That's great. I love that.
Um, I love any Dobby scene, to be honest. They're so
Yeah,
cute.
they
The
really
way
are.
that the way that she writes them too.
Mm.
It's like a little kid just like learning about the world and all
Yeah.
these. Yeah, so great. Um, let's see, just a couple more. This one I love so much. The end of Goblet of Fire, the conversation between Fudge and Dumbledore.
Ooh.
It's just it's so it just hits you so hard in the
Yeah.
chest. It's like Dumbledore is meaning business now. Like we have reached the parting of the ways. Like,
Yeah.
damn, that is
Oh my
crazy.
God. I know, it's so good.
Just the turning point of the series. Like some people, say the graveyard scene is kind of like the the point where the books become mature. I see
Mm.
this as a plot wise. This is a change in.
Yeah.
This is the transition of the plot from Harry kind of dealing with these like individual like bogeys and baddies
Mm.
to dealing with the entire world of magic and
Yeah.
how it's against him and how he needs to kind of go through that to actually get to the actual guy he needs to
Yeah.
take care of.
That's so good. Because
But
that
yeah,
that chapter on its own, maybe it isn't the first time you really see Dumbledore like at his full glory, but I remember reading that chapter for the first time. That was another one that just like had weight for me, where I read that and was like, holy smokes, the command that Dumbledore has over a room is just like it's like next level. Like his just aura about him is just unbelievable. So I love that. It's a good take.
yeah, great scene, great scene. Um, let's see, and obviously with my love for Fred and George, my two favorite moments in the book related to them is, well, okay, the second one isn't really a happy scene, but the first one
Mm.
is the poo scene. This made me crack up so much
It's
reading for
so
this for the
good.
first time.
So good.
Why are you worrying about who when you could be worrying about poo? So so immature but so funny. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, I just rolling across the floor laughing when I read it for the first time.
Yeah.
And then obviously the death scene
Mm-hmm.
with Fred. It's just the way that JK can do emotion. Percy had just come back and he
Yeah. Oh
just
my gosh, I know.
repented to his parents, and he just can't. He's like he's doing this the kind of the thing that was that Amos was doing to Cedric at the end of
Yeah.
at the end of Goblet in the movie, but just like the whole like you can't get your body off of him. He just I
Yeah.
need to stay with him with my brother. Oh,
It's a devastating
that's
scene.
just devastating, and yeah, that's um, I'd be so curious to learn about. We know a little bit about George and
Mm.
still doing the joke shop afterwards, and Ron kind of helping out later, but yeah, I just wonder what George's life was after Fred's death. Like
Agreed.
I don't know how he would live. It's
Agreed.
just
That's
yeah,
why I was talking to someone and they were saying how Percy's life is really interesting after Fred's death, which I think is
oh
true,
yeah,
but obviously George is the one that is in the forefront of your mind. Like what was life like for him after his twin brother died? There has to be something that's like deeper there that you just like there was definitely a piece of him that I think his family probably noticed as well that like just wasn't there anymore. Which is again something that is so evident in this series with Thestrals, which is why I love that idea in the book so much, is that people who have experienced and seen death like that are just like on a, they're not like superior in any way, but they just see the world in a slightly different way. And I think George took that not necessarily as like a crutch, but like I think he wore that. It was like a limp for him everywhere he went. He like always remembered his brother, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, just so intensely sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
It's a good list.
yeah, a couple of my favorite moments. I love, yeah, I think that there's what the cool thing is that's not like oh one certain book where all like the best scenes are in.
Yeah.
There's good
Spread
stuff
apart, I know.
in each one.
Yeah.
But oh, what I was just thinking while you were talking is if I was better at art, the first thing that I would draw is George looking into the mirror of Erised and seeing Fred.
Oh
I
man.
it's man, that's just
Dang, that's so good.
so good, so sad, but yeah, seeing that depicted
Oh,
would be just beautiful. Maybe we can do some AI stuff with that.
yeah, seriously. AI would probably give us some weird stuff maybe, but I've been trying to do
Maybe,
some
but
AI stuff. That would be so good. Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah. But Fred and George, what lovely characters.
I know, agreed. They're so great. Now do you have any super hot takes on the series?
Man, I don't think I do. I think
It's great.
I'm a
I love that.
pretty, I'm a pretty like read, I kind of take everything for it is, the emotional moments, the funny moments,
Yeah.
like I just take them for what they are. I think maybe the only hot take is that the Quidditch chapters are absolutely wonderful,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
um,
which surprisingly is a hot take because most people hate those chapters and I
I
love them.
I don't get it. Like everyone's like, oh, he wins every match and all that kind. Well, yeah, he's great at Quidditch. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just.
It's like
And don't you
athletics.
like
Yeah.
seeing Harry win? Like, man, he has such a sad life. Gotta
I
enjoy the
know.
moments where he's actually winning.
Yep. I love that. It's so good.
Yeah,
Um Now we can talk about some other stuff, but just like in some of the Harry Potter discussion, can you just kind of tell me what the series has meant to you?
yeah. Um, I kind of see. I was kind of speaking this a little early before we were recording, but um, it's kind of like the thing where, especially in my early years, it defined me,
Mm,
if you were to have a conversation with me, at some point I'd bring up Harry Potter.
mm.
And if you didn't like Harry Potter, not like you so much. Just kidding. But I
Yeah, no, no.
but I it defined me in a lot of ways. I maybe this is weird to say, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a Horcrux. I feel like it
Mm,
ties me to this world. It give it's taught me life
dang.
lessons.
Yeah.
It's shown me how friendships are, and how a family dynamic
Mm,
looks in a big family setting, and
mm,
how people go through difficulty in their life. And I think I've been very fortunate that I've had a pretty great upbringing. I've had a lot of great opportunities in my life, and just I think Harry Potter has brought like a sort of depth to my understanding about what life can be.
yeah.
And
Agreed. Yeah.
um yeah, and it's taught me a lot of things too. I mean, I just mentioned a few, but one of my favorite quotes in the series is Sirius talking to Harry, and he's like, forget the exact wording, but it's not about how you treat the people who are equal to you, but
Yep.
about the people who are inferior. And
Yes.
it's kind of ironic that he kind of treated Creature kind of
I
like
know. That's what was
garbage,
his
but
downfall. I know.
but it's one of those things where for me, coming from California, I live in the Bay Area, and it's a relatively affluent area, and
Mm-hmm.
you know medical care is pretty easy to get, and trust in the healthcare system it's relatively high.
Mm.
But coming to Philadelphia, as a pre-med student, I've tried to get involved in things like free clinics in the area,
Yeah.
things like that, because especially in Philadelphia, there are a lot of kind of communities that are immigrant communities
Yep.
or, um, you know, uh, just people who aren't necessarily connected to, they're kind of isolated from the entirety of Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
I think establishing, trust, medical trust in those areas, is such an important endeavor, especially in this city. And I think just it's kind of expounding upon what the quote's meaning is, but I think just seeing everybody else from their own shoes and their own perspective
Yeah.
is so important. And I think this book series has definitely shown me that, because you kind of see the consequences of when you don't do that.
Yep.
And yeah, this series has grounded me throughout my childhood, and like I was saying before, I think I'm a little more fleshed out now. I think I have a lot more
Yeah.
other obsessions, I guess, but yeah, Harry Potter was a big reason why I have the interest that I do.
Yeah.
And,
That's
yeah,
what
I'm excited.
one of my favorite quotes is from Zadie Smith, and she talks about how art and stories, she like talks about all these other things, how they're different forms of education, but says that art and stories are the education of your emotions. And so if you want to be a really well-rounded adult, you have to read stories. You have to like listen to great music. You have to like understand like what these stories are trying to communicate to you. Because that teaches you how to be a good like adult, a good human. And I feel like Harry Potter has just taught a whole generation the value of friendship, the value of loyalty, the value of bravery. And I feel like the lessons that she teaches in this series are just so embedded in like the story itself that it's just a revolution. I just love it so much. It is so fantastic. And
Yeah.
I'm the same with you. Like it leads me into all sorts of other obsessions. Like I got tons of other obsessions, and I have all these things I like because there's these brilliant pieces of art that people are creating. These things that people are making that are just like, they're just shared human experiences. And like I'll watch something and I'll love it for maybe some entertainment value. I'll watch something else and love it for like, how it communicates things about love or like my own experience through things. And like I'll listen to a piece of music and I'll love it. And I'm like trying to sometimes dissect. I was like, why do I love this so much? And a lot of times, a lot of my friends bust me on this, but even in the book club that I met, or that I knew Jen, Danny, and Kristen, but they were at this book club, and everyone in the book club busts me because they're always like, why do you pick so many depressing books? And like they all know like I like depressing like music, and I'm like it because it taps me into a different emotion that I have that I'm like I can't fully explain it, but like the more I listen to that stuff, sometimes the more alive that I feel, which is a strange way to put it. And with all these other like obsessions that I have, it connects me to other people so well. And like again, the older I get, same with Harry Potter. Harry Potter is all about this. Like it is really about building the relationships in your life. And I love obsessing over these things that I love obsessing over with other people. That's why like even this other like channel that I want to do on like obsession, it's like one of my favorite things growing up in high school and college that I did was just sit around watching movies or playing video games or like playing board games with friends and just like hanging out and doing that. I'm like, I just want to do this more often. And if one of my friends, like I had this thing where the Tangled movie came out when I was in like a sophomore in college or something like that. And I remember like hearing the music and I was like, oh, it's like interesting. I like want to go see that or go like watch the movie. So I remember just sitting in my dorm room on my own and I was just watching this movie Tangled, a Disney movie. And like, I was like, part of the soccer team, like supposed to be like a really manly man. And like, I'm like in my dorm room, just on my own watching Tangled.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this one guy walks in, like one of my best friends at the time walked in and it was like the last 10 minutes of the movie. And he's like watching and he was like making fun of me at first. And then he's like just sitting there watching. He's like, this is great. He's like, would you want to rewatch it when you finish? And I was like, yeah. So I finished. I brought it out into his room and we watched it. And we had like 10 other people huddled around us watching Tangled together. We were all laughing at these parts. It was like just a shared human experience And I love that so much. It's just something that, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's the simple things in life.
Mm.
And like my favorite movie of all time is Up. And
Ooh, nice.
one of my favorite quotes from that movie is when Russell is talking about, he didn't really have the best relationship with his dad. He wasn't
Yeah.
really in his life very much, and he's telling about his experience and how the things that he remembers most about his dad is just
Mm.
the simple things,
Yeah.
and it just that makes me just tear up every time.
Yep.
It's just like because it's that's why, not to get in a tangent about Up, but that's why it's a movie for all ages.
Yep.
If you're 90 years old, you can think back to your childhood and like, there's just the simple times of, just hanging out with your buddies and, doing things, that you maybe can't do now. And
Yeah.
just the nostalgia factor. Yeah. Anyway, beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Don't want to get into
It's
Up, but
no, we can
um,
we can get as deep into Up as we want. Like that's another thing that you said something that I think really touched on something that I love about these things, these stories is like I really love children's literature, and like really good children's literature turns to a point where it's
yeah,
not necessarily about, it's not really like children's literature. It's stories that are written for adults that children can enjoy too. And like when you read some of these different stories, that are like, everyone's like, oh, Pixar movies are really meant for kids, but the when you're an adult sitting and watching like Inside Out, or you're watching Up, or you're watching like some of these, even like Ratatouille, some of these brilliant children's movies from that Pixar made, like the unbelievable lessons that you get when you're an adult and you're like, holy smokes, like this is teaching my kid unbelievable things. I think it's just, so there are some people out there that are just creating it at another level, and I love it so much.
yeah. I mean, I have to actually thank you for this. Is on your stream, you read The Heart in the Bottle to us,
Yeah.
and just made me feel like a kid again. I love the book, and I actually got it as a Christmas gift to one of my best friends,
I love
because
that. That makes me
he
so
just
happy.
makes me feel, he allows me to take my heart out of the bottle. And so, those kids books, yeah, they're
Yeah.
so underrated. Yeah,
Agreed. Agreed.
just beautiful. And then just to touch on the point you were talking about, how people are ragging on you for loving like sad music and sad stories. Like they really shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm taking a class this semester actually called the neuroscience of music and the brain, and we're
Ooh.
talking about a lot of cool stuff. Not all related to what we're talking here, but one point that I remember pretty distinctly is that even if just because you're listening to sad music, or it doesn't mean that you're feeling sad at the moment.
Yeah.
You're
Yep.
it's beyond that. You're connecting to yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
kind of understand. I think it allows you to be open a
Mm.
little bit. And I think like Inside Out is my second favorite animated movie behind well, the third favorite. I
Okay.
don't know
Ooh.
whether
Wait. Wait. What are your top three? So Up is your favorite.
Up was my favorite. I think Kung Fu Panda comes into number two.
Kung Fu Panda is a great. It's one of the best movie trilogies of all time.
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
making enough fourth one, I think, right?
Yep. The trailer just came out today. It's gonna be
Ooh.
exciting.
Love
Yeah,
that.
it's exciting. But then I think Inside Out comes out. It
Yeah.
comes in number three.
It's great.
But
You should watch. I recommend this movie all the time. It's a movie called Kubo and the Two Strings.
oh my gosh, I heard about that one years ago.
That one
Kubo and
blew
the Two
my
Strings.
mind. It was so good, so
Yeah.
good.
Oh
Love
my
that
gosh.
movie.
Will do. Yeah. I'll definitely. Man, yeah. I feel like I have to choose my movies selectively with how, like, the time that I got
Yeah,
nowadays. But
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I gotta like I mean, it's music related. It seems like, huh?
yeah, yeah. Very music related. Very
Lovely. Yeah.
so good.
I'll have to give it a look. Have to give it a look. Um,
But yeah, I
yeah.
love what you said. Like, yeah, like listening to sad music, it doesn't make me. It's not because I'm in a sad mood. It's because sometimes, I remember doing we're watching a YouTube video on this, on, I think it was like, I forgot it. It might have been Nerd Writer, or it might have been someone else. I forgot the exact YouTuber. I gotta find it and link it in this. But they were talking about sad music and certain things, but they said the reason that sad music works so well is because it's never really truly about sadness. It's always about hope. So whenever you're listening to sad music, like I never really feel sad when I'm listening to it. It's like it brings you out of that, and it gives you the ability to hope and to feel something super deep and super emotional. And I think I relish in those feelings. I hope is like one of my, hope is a scary thing, but it's one of my favorite abstract concepts.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm so interested in what Inside Out 2 ends up doing,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
towards the end of Inside Out 1, you get the kind of mixed sad and joy
Yeah.
kind of
So
memory.
good.
And I think I've kind of analyzed Inside Out just a little bit, about how which emotion is at the forefront of your your desk panel, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the mom has sadness as her middle person, and the dad has anger. But it doesn't mean that the dad is just angry all the time.
Yeah.
I think it just means, I think anger sometimes can lead to determination,
Yes.
things like that. Whereas sadness can lead to empathy. I think it's just
Yes.
that kind of stuff. That's why Inside Out is such a just, yeah, it's a movie that you can you can
Yeah.
do so much with.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So good.
So yeah, it's lovely stuff.
I know, it's so good, dude. I feel like I could talk with you all night about this kind of stuff, but we'll wrap it up. We'll do a 2.0 discussion another time too, because this is the best. I love this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But thanks so much for joining me. I will. I'll probably see you around on some streams and some other stuff that we do. But we'll. Thanks for talking about your love and your obsession of Harry Potter and other things. It was great.
Yeah, we'll have to talk Percy Jackson at some point.
I know. Yeah, we got to do Percy Jackson in the first time readers.
Yep, that will be so good.
Now, do you probably like Harry Potter more than Percy Jackson? But is Percy Jackson like a close second? Is it as good as Harry Potter?
It's definitely not as good.
Okay.
But I think I like to think of it as a little different. It's
okay.
I think Percy is a little bit more of a likable main character. And I think the story is a little more adventurous. I think it's a little different than Harry Potter, because Harry Potter kind of brings you to a different world while also maintaining in the same world.
Yeah.
Whereas, without giving any spoilers, I think Percy Jackson is kind of, the setting is in our world, but that they're just ethereal beings within our world.
Gotcha.
So it's a little different. I think that's why it's not as good, just because you don't get absorbed in the world as much.
Yeah, for sure.
Just fantastic series still.
I know. I'm pumped to read that. That's gonna be my first time read. I'm gonna document the whole thing. Maybe you'll be the host and you'll guide me through Percy Jackson. That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin. It was great meeting you. Great chatting with you. I'll talk to you later.
You as well. Sounds good, man. See ya.
All right, have a good one.